Hello and welcome to the Formula E Zone podcast. Now, my name is Jack George Maynard and we'll be doing a special podcast today. We'll be doing an end of season review looking at all the teams. And with me to do the podcast as ever is Tobias Bloom.
Hey ho! How are you, Jack?
Not bad. I'm very well. Looking forward to this podcast. I think we've got a real lot to talk about. Season 5 was thrilling really from start to finish, so we've got a lot to discuss.
Oh yeah, first discussion topic, was it the best season, do you think?
Oh, that's interesting.
Putting you on the spot here. But.
That's interesting. I think it was one of the... trying to think of a good season. I liked season 3 a bit. Season 4 with Rosenquist and Mahindra's. I'd probably say it was probably one of the better seasons.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was
absolutely.
the best.
Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Nah,
a spontaneous question that popped into my mind.
But it was a good question, to be fair. But what I want to say just before we start, this is the first podcast we're doing without Dan, and I just want to say from the bottom of my heart how much I really appreciated Dan on the podcast. Did an amazing job, and I know he's probably listening, but obviously with lots of work that he's got on his end, plus his own channel, it was sort of like, just the workload was just a little bit too much for him, and that was fully understandable. So I just want to say a massive thank you at the start of the podcast to Dan.
Thank you, Dan. We love you.
We love you too. I hope you're listening. Right, so let's get on with it. So we're going to start from the bottom first of the team's championship, and then we'll just move our way on. So, this season, the bottom team was Neo. Tobias, how would you assess Neo's season?
Shambles. Shambolic season for them. I really feel for them. Because so much went wrong in the summer of 2018, and then they had their car homologated, and the drivers were really doing their best. Tom Dillman, Oliver Turvey, both amazingly talented drivers, but they didn't stand a chance against, well, not even against their competition, against their car. Dillman, the only driver to have competed in each and every race this season, not scored a single point. He's now listed as 24th, I think, in the overall standings. We obviously had 25 different drivers taking part this season, and Tom Dillman didn't score a point in any race.
It's just crazy, really. Tom Dillman's best place was 12th. Like, he couldn't even get one place outside the points. 12th place, he scored it twice. So It was a real difficult season for Tom Dillman. And Tom Dillman set the world alight when he came into Formula E. You have to remember that when he stepped into that Venturi, he was quick. So it just really showed for me, and obviously we know how quick Turvey is. He's been in it since the end of season 1, and to only score 7 points. He's been on pole
position. He's been on the podium.
Obviously we're going back last season when he was leading the Mexico E-Prix and then fell back to second. But it was just it's been a really difficult season. And my question for you really is, look, this is the real horrible thing about when you're in a team as a driver that's struggling, because you all of a sudden sort of become forgotten. Like Tom Dillman's achievements when he first jumped into a Formula E car, when you just spend the whole season at the back doing nothing, I feel like you forget that. I feel like you forget how good Oliver Turvey actually is. So I'm wondering, as a driver perspective, I know their seats aren't technically confirmed for next season, but, would you be, with the driver market being a bit funny as it is, we won't go into that too much now, but would you maybe be on the phone to some other teams?
Well, I know for a fact that Tom Dillman, well, he said to me in Berlin already that he's pretty much set, and that he is not planning on changing teams. I'm not sure about Oliver Turvey, though. He's been with the team ever since day 1. And day 2. He joined in season 2, did he?
Well, he joined London. It was London. He made a
a
season debut in London, the double header.
Ah, you're right. Yeah. Well, he's been with the team for a long time. Let's just say that. And he's been involved in the development of all these cars they produce. And as I said, he's been on pole position. He's been in contention for race wins. He's, without question, one of the better drivers on this grid. There are no bad drivers on this grid. But Oliver Turvey is one of the better ones out of the great ones. Difficult to tell, because I don't really see a seat opening up for him.
My only suggestion could be Mahindra if Pascal Wehrlein is not there. But apart from that, I don't really see any others. Any others that are probably worth going to, that he might be called up on.
Speculation.
Yeah, speculation. Well,
Thing is,
we'll get into
yeah,
that later.
we love speculating on this podcast, but to be honest, I don't have a clue where all the drivers are ending up next year, including Oliver Turvey. For now, I'll just say his best chance is staying with Neo.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree to that. But the thing is, it's interesting actually talking about Neo, because Neo have been a team that, you know, off the track in their sort of like road car going, they're showing off all these amazing electric supercars, and they're trying to beat records at the Nürburgring, and you know they're piling out this new Neo electric SUV range. And you'd think, you know, Formula E must be like, with all the stuff that they're doing behind the scenes in their road car would be really feeding into making a fantastic Formula E car. But it's just the last 2 seasons, and obviously last season they finished 8th in the Constructors' Championship. This season they finished 11th and only picking up 7 points. The worst performance, I think, by any team in Formula E this year. So why do you think it's not working?
Well, their biggest problem this year arguably was the homologation date, or maybe not the date, but the fact that cars have to be homologated and that you can't change hardware after that. And Neo surely had a problem on their powertrain. We don't know it for certain, but it looks it seems pretty clear that they had a problem with their powertrain, and they weren't efficient enough, they weren't quick enough in quali, they couldn't profit of any situation, rain or sunshine, they were never good in any situation. So that indicates a problem with their car on the hardware side, and a problem that can't be fixed with software. And after their car had been homologated, they obviously couldn't change anything on the hardware side of things. And they pretty much shot themselves in the foot even before the season got underway. Now, with a new season coming, they obviously had a lot of time to look into their issues and had a lot of time developing their new powertrain for this new season. And homologation is coming up in the next couple of weeks, and they have a new chance. It's pretty much a clean sheet of paper. Obviously, other teams have an advantage because they have more data with better powertrains, and they are now kind of trying to close the gap to their competition. But in my view, it will the fact that Neo had their hardware and that they couldn't change anything, and they were lost from the get-go. And now will be trying surely for Season 6 to make up that disadvantage and maybe turn it into an advantage going into the new season. I'm optimistic.
So I might as well talk about it now rather than waiting to the end. So there was a story that came out saying that there might be some changes going into Neo for next season, there could be a different sort of company sort of taking over the team, and maybe key personnel like Jerry Hughes, who's been the team principal of the team for a couple of seasons now, could be, you know, walking out. And, you know, the Neo brand, because obviously, as we were saying, they were doing so well in the road industry with their electric cars and pushing that, but then when you're getting the publicity of not winning Formula E races and being at the back, it's probably not good for selling electric cars in the future. So maybe this sort of change that could be happening might make sense.
I wouldn't go as far as approaching it from a marketing point of view, because according to that report that came out recently by our dear colleagues at eRacing 365, Neo will still remain. Even though there are plans for a new company owning the team, Neo will still remain the title sponsor of the team. So the name of the company, Neo, will still be on their car. I think it's just a matter of operational staff, maybe, or operational processes, maybe. And Neo, of course, wants to focus. That's their argument, their line of argument, that they want to focus on their road car development and kind of don't want to abandon Formula E, because that's an amazing testing ground for them. Not really sure why Neo are leaving as the owner of the team, but there will be reasons for it, and I think those reasons are operational and not marketing reasons. Yeah.
Fair play. Now then, let's move on to Dragon. Now, I think the early days of being third in the Constructors or the Teams Championship back in like Season 1 and, battling at the top, those days for Dragon have just disappeared. Like, again, where do you think it's gone wrong for Dragon?
Their management?
Well, don't say that too near Jay Penske.
Similar to Nia, though. It's not the drivers. It might be the car, but we've seen that the car is capable of delivering good performances. Max Günther was amazing this year. Was in contention for he wasn't in contention for podiums, but top 5 finishes were possible, and he did manage that on one occasion or 2 occasions. Not sure. 2 occasions. Yeah, he was 5th in Paris and in Bern. And Max has proven to be an amazing and outstanding driver this year. I was really surprised by him. Personally, for me, he's my driver of the year. Oh, no, not my driver, but my rookie of the year. There are other amazing rookies we've had. Pascal Wehrlein, Oliver Rowland, just to name 2. But the way Max Günther handled the situation, the management situation at Dragon, was outstanding in my eyes. And he just kept his head down and focused on the task ahead of him and didn't let anything happening on the contractual side of things. Him obviously kind of being thrown out of the team halfway through the season, being replaced by Felipe Nasr. He kept his head down and delivered, and Dragon scored 23 points in the end of the year. He is responsible for 20 of them. So he did an amazing job. Outqualified and outdrove his much and far more experienced teammate Pechito Lopez, who did a decent job but couldn't really keep up with Günther come the European season. It's been a difficult year for Dragon, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think that was the main surprise. Obviously, the weirdness of switching drivers for Günther, who arguably you could say at the beginning of the season was also struggling. But Jose Maria Lopez is a driver that, okay, remember when he came to Dragon Season 4, straight after the mess with Niljani, and he set the world alight. Like, that Dragon car looked like it was bottom, and all of a sudden Jose Maria Lopez was taken in a Super Bowl and was proving the good driver that he was at Virgin when he was there at Season 3. But for me, seeing Jose Maria Lopez not even get to grips with that car was really interesting. Like, there were some bright sparks. Like, yes, they made a Super Bowl appearance here and there and a good qualifying performance, and maybe 1 or 2 getting some good points. But I found it interesting that, I think the Formula E paddock really rates Jose Maria Lopez, and the fact that he didn't get it together this season, I thought it was really interesting, and that for Günther in the second half of the season really did outperform him.
Yep. Difficult to tell what the reason behind all of that is. But they were struggling, and of course they didn't have the best of cars. Sadly, it doesn't look like they'll have a better car next year as well. There was a report out a couple of weeks ago that they might be becoming that they were planning on becoming a customer team and ending their constructor relationship with FE.
Turns out makes sense for me, because they make, as I said, it was like when I was talking to Alex Ty at Virgin last season in Paris, when Virgin were talking about losing the DS manufacturer and becoming a customer team. We're like, we don't make cars, and the Dragon team doesn't make cars, so it might make sense for them not to waste all this money building a powertrain and let someone else who is a car manufacturer actually come in and maybe become they buy an existing team like Audi with Virgin or Nissans or so forth, DS maybe, and go that way.
But the big problem with that is that you have to hand in your application for a customer team by the end of January, and January 2019 is a couple of months ago. And thing is,
might be something they do for Season 7 though.
They might plan that for Season 7, but thing is, they missed the deadline for Season 6. So they were maybe planning, or they had the thought of becoming a customer team. That's what I understand. The team wasn't, sadly and obviously, willing to comment on that. But from what I understand is that Dragon was planning on buying a powertrain from another team, from another manufacturer. They missed the deadline and didn't start development on their own powertrain in the meantime because they totally forgot about it. That's what I understand, and that's of course a rumor and all of that. The team didn't want to comment on that, but that's what I've heard so far. And by the look of things, Dragon won't have a Season 6 powertrain as of now. Of course, we're all waiting for confirmation on the final lists and all of that, and the applications handed into the FIA. But by the currently, it doesn't look good for Dragon, because it seems as if they don't have developed a Season 6 powertrain themselves, and as if they don't have a customer deal with any manufacturer, which would mean that they'd have to run their Season 5 powertrain in Season 6. And that doesn't look promising, does it?
No, it doesn't. I hope
we'll
that's
have
not
to wait
true
and
for
see.
them.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I hope it's just a rumor, but from what I've gathered in these final European races, informally it did report about it, and that's broadly what others have confirmed to me as well, that they won't continue as a manufacturer for the near future, and that they might have to run their Season 5 powertrain for next year. It doesn't look good, no.
Now, if you remember, before we move away from Dragon, all the Ford links that Dragon were sort of like being encompassed with, and I feel like if Jay Penske's very good at getting people on board. Now, the way it looks like it's going for Dragon, it looks like they need help. And remember, back to Season 3, I remember being in London, and Jay Penske was giving us a whole presentation about this Faraday Future link. Going in for Season 4, it's never encompassed. Like, that was supposed to be their major back in their major OEM in a sense. That would help them into Season 4 and Season 5, which completely collapsed, which has probably been part of the reason why Dragon have collapsed so much. So I feel like they do need help from somewhere. Now, it'd be really interesting, because obviously I don't know how much Jay Penske can relate to his father, obviously with Roger Penske. Now, Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not sure if you'll know yourself, but because I've just thought of it off the top of my head. In IndyCar, the Penske cars are Chevrolet cars. I'm pretty sure they are. They're Chevrolet run engines.
I'll have to research that.
I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident now, because Simon Pagenaud won the Indy 500. And it's just come into my brain. And he runs the 22 Menards yellow car, which is a Penske car, and that's powered by a Chevrolet engine. Anyway, what I'm getting at that is there's a good relationship there with America. And obviously American teams like Chevrolet, Ford, they would have to eventually move to this electric sort of power train as well. And Chevrolet have got a massive racing pedigree, so do Ford. So I'm thinking, with all the OEMs that we've got right now, I feel like, Jay, maybe just get on the phone and say if there's anyone in America that could help you right now. So, I don't know. That would be my dream. I would love to see Chevrolet. I'm a big Chevrolet fan. I really love their cars. It's a shame I can't buy them in the United Kingdom. But I think that might be a good move. That I reckon really they probably will be brought out. Maybe Jay Penske might be there to still run the team, maybe operationally, but maybe some help from a manufacturer probably is what they need desperately.
According to the encyclopedia of my confidence and my trust, Penske is running Chevy cars in IndyCar.
Yeah. I thought so. I don't know why I doubted myself for a second. I was like, well, I asked myself, I was like, yeah, I'm sure Simon Pagenaud won it. And never mind, okay? IndyCar, this is Formula E. But I still think it would be awesome to see either Ford or Chevrolet in. And obviously Dragon is an American team. And to keep that, that American team in there, essentially, because we sort of had two with Andretti, but now sort of they're German with BMW, making more of a focus on that, with just American links with Andretti. It could be a really interesting prospect. Now, moving on to a team that you probably took a lot of interest in this season, HWA. Soon to be Mercedes, but we're HWA this season. I think they had an amazing season.
It was a classic rookie year for them, wasn't it?
It was a really good learning bed for Mercedes, and I think the Mercedes will will take this as a really good baseline to move forward from.
Sure, because now the team knows, and in the end of the day, HWA will still kind of run the trackside operations for Mercedes, and now their team knows how things are going in Formula E. You have to keep in mind that the one-day format of the race events is special, and if you look at what HWA did before, they did DTM, that's a whole weekend. Mercedes, with the support coming out of Brackley, is doing F1, that's a whole weekend, and you have to squeeze everything together in Formula E for one day, and that takes a bit of time to get used to. And so it's good that HWA have the experience now, and just generally know how things are running in Formula E, how much time things take. They understand the cars a bit, they know how the chassis works a bit, and they come in as a manufacturer next year with Mercedes, and we'll be looking to... yeah, of course they'll be looking to replicate their success in Formula 1. I'm doubting that this will happen next year already.
But I think they're in a good line to be fine. I think they'll be like a Red Bull. Like
they've set a good baseline.
Thereabouts, someone who might not finish on the podium every race, but might finish on the podium every now and then. I think that would be a really good... If Mercedes were achieving that next season, I think that would be a very solid start. But just focus a bit more on HWA. I think they did have that slow start to the season, but then it sort of started to click together around Santiago with Stoffel Van Dorn's first Super Bowl appearance. And then in Hong Kong, getting that pole position, like ever since that pole position, Tobias, for Stoffel Van Dorn, the fortunes for that team seem to just massively change going into the second half of the season.
They were always good on hot laps, especially Stoffel was amazing on one fast and quick lap. But in the long run, they maybe didn't have the best and the most efficient powertrain. And of course, their major problem this year was their drive shafts.
Yes.
We saw...
Remember the classic Rome?
How many cars retired because of drive shaft issues?
Quite a few, quite a number. Most of them were HWA and Venturi, because obviously remembering they were using the Venturi powertrain.
Yep. And that's really been hindering them this year. HWA finished 9th after all, and in the end, that's a decent result for a team coming in as rookies. 44 points to their name, but that could have been a lot more had it not been for the reliability of their car and of their powertrain. But as I say, it's been a learning year for them, and they've set a good baseline. They now understand Formula E, and I'm sure are ready to attack and to pounce next year. Because
I think it was sort of that race in Rome, just to go back for it, where Van Dorn finished third, the first podium for the team.
Yeah.
You wanted him to be part of that fight with Evans and Lotterer, but he just fell back. And he had, to be fair, normally for HWA at the beginning of the season, they had that great qualifying performance, and then they just slipped back and further back and further back and further back. But Rome, for me, was really stand out, simply because he fell back, yes, from Lotterer and Evans, but he had a gap to those in 4th and 5th, which was, I think, a big plus sign for HWA. It just shows that they had made gains in software, that they were moving in the right direction. And, rather than falling back every race, to actually maintain position and actually get away but drop back a little bit from the leading runs was, for me, a fantastic show of development and how much they'd actually progressed this season. And obviously then you said on the way back, the drive shaft failed, which was interesting. So he had to walk his way back to the podium ceremony, capping off their reliability issues that he said. But all in all, I thought it was a really good season.
Absolutely, yeah. Rome, arguably, of course, being their highlight of the year. Also, Berlin was good. Stoffel finished in P5 there.
P5, yep.
At the team's home race.
A good race again, and was able to keep up.
Absolutely, yeah. So we did see a bit of promising pace here and there coming out of the HWA team. And as I say, lots of promises made for next year. I'll be interested to see where Mercedes are come November.
Come testing.
Yeah, not testing. November.
Oh, yeah. Come,
Never
Nigeria.
believe in the testing times,
Well, yeah,
Jack.
because
Testing
no, and
doesn't mean a thing.
a lot of people did this season, and we'll get onto that in a short while. But then Venturi next, and I just feel it's same old with Venturi. It's just
Yeah.
another season, just pottering along, like just finishing towards the back, but beating a few teams, having a random day in Hong Kong for whatever reason. Hong Kong is like they wish they could race there every week, because if they raced every week, they could win the championship. Because again, Eduardo Mortara in Hong Kong was there or thereabouts. And then with the kerfuffle at the end of Andre Lara and Sam Bird getting the penalty, but Mortara coming home in second, they get their first win. But again, their season, when you say it's like, oh, it's not a great season, just the same old, just finishing towards the back, but they got a win.
They did, yeah. But after the win, Mortara didn't score a single point. It looked very promising at the beginning of the year. 4th in Santiago, 3rd in Mexico. Obviously profited enormously from the Pascal Wehrlein penalty. That's the only reason he was on the podium. Or, I mean, he wasn't on the podium, but he was qualified. He was 3rd in the end, and won in Hong Kong. And after Hong Kong, he didn't score a single point. Massa then kind of carried on with the point streak for HWA. He was 3rd in Monaco, the team's home race. Probably their highlight of the year. I'd maybe rate that race on a similar level to Hong Kong, just for what it means for the Monegasque team to win in Monaco. But all in all, Venturi had 6 races without a single point. And that's maybe the reason they are not where they want to be. They ended the season in 8th, which is fair enough. Susie Wolf did an amazing job as a team principal. You have to give it to her. That was really good. Did a good job at managing the team, which isn't always very easy. Just go and ask Dragon. But Venturi, they were decent, but they were not one of the front runners.
But
by far,
you have to remember though with Venturi is that they're not going to have the budget of the BMW, the Audi, and yes, they're running as an OEM themselves, and they do produce. They were trying to build that fastest electric car in the world when Formula E was being born. So they had interest in obviously Formula E and electric cars and the production of them. But I just feel like and this is where Formula E now, as it begins to grow, as we sort of see in Formula 1, where the teams that have got the bigger budgets and, got the more resources, more people, because Venturi is only a very small, little, tiny team. You have to remember this compared to the likes of Audi and BMW and Jaguar and so forth. So I feel like what they're achieving for them is probably good, but then for me, I think maybe they should be. I think a good season for them next season is challenging Mahindra, because I feel like Mahindra are at a similar level, sort of operationally, as Venturi. So I feel like for Venturi to have a successful season next year, they've got to start being a bit more consistent and fighting Mahindra a bit more. Because in terms of that little midfield battle going on and teams that don't have that much money, they're not doing as good of a job as Mahindra. So I feel like they need to, for them to start having successful seasons and to start thinking they're having so-so seasons, same old every season from Venturi, is they've got to start battling Mahindra. Would you agree?
Good idea. Yeah, I would agree, but I wouldn't say they are on the same level operationally. I think Mahindra still is a bit superior to Venturi, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But Venturi could use Mahindra to pull them along and pull them towards the top.
I think that should be their target.
Mahindra could be a good target for them, yeah. It depends on, of course, how the cars and the performance of the powertrains of the cars are next year. We'll have to wait and see, really, how things stand in November. But if we only take season 5 performance, Mahindra would be a good team to pull Venturi along if Venturi wants to get itself out of the bottom 4.
So let's say, just as a quick wrap up, let's just say HWA, which become Mercedes now, we'd expect Mercedes to beat Venturi next season in the standings. I think that would be a sort of like a gimme. You'd sort of expect Mercedes to beat them. So if, Neo finished again last in Dragon, then that sort of pushes Venturi down a position, and then ninth in the team's championship rather than being eighth. Well, they could be 10th because once if Porsche beats them, so then all of a sudden, what's looking like they're doing okay, it sort of becomes like a bad season. So that's why I'm saying, like, for Venturi, you've got to be targeting, like, to try and be one of the front runners of the midfield, or trying to be in the battle with the midfield runners, because otherwise, what we're thinking is okay now for Venturi, in 12 months' time, when we do this again, it might not be okay. Happy days. Right. Jaguar then is the next one. So, Tobias, how do you assess the Jaguar season? Because I think they've had a fairly decent season.
They did, yeah. I've always had a bit of a sweet spot for Jaguar. Always really liked the job they were doing at building their team pretty much from scratch. Although I have to say they had a reasonably... you didn't notice Jaguar a lot, apart from Rome and Bern, maybe.
It sort of came on second half of the season. Like, first half of the season, they were still struggling with the car, and we had that mess with Nelson Piquet Jr., and we can't forget that. Like, Nelson Piquet Jr. was really struggling in that car, which arguably back in season 3 when they signed Piquet, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was season 3. But anyway, when they signed Piquet, that was their big driver announcement. They got the season 1 champion, and he had an okay season. Like, I think his season against Mitch Evans in season 4 was sort of criticised a little bit because everyone thought Mitch Evans did well, but Piquet outqualified Mitch Evans in that over the course of that season 7-5. So I feel like he was a good driver, but he really struggled at the beginning of the season.
Who, Mitch or Nelson?
Nelson. 1 point. He only scored 1 point. Got the point in Adiria, and then the next couple of races that he was in, he failed to score.
Yeah. He didn't have the best of years. I understand the reasoning given by James Barkley, that the results just weren't the ones the team was aiming for. He was 10th in Adiria, 14th in Marrakesh, P11 in Chile. Then, did he finish in Mexico and Hong Kong?
No,
I don't think he
crashed, didn't he? It was the famous crash over the top of, I think it was...
Yeah, you're right. He didn't finish.
No, was it Degrassi or Vern? I can't remember. But it was one of the...
It was Vern,
Vern.
It was Vern in Mexico.
And he went over the top and...
And I think he ended up in the wall in Hong Kong. And then 16th in Sanya. Was nowhere that race. Oh, well, he was somewhere that race, but did a mistake himself and ended up in the wall. And... not the best of years for him. The year before, he had a lot of bad luck. You remember the belt story, of course.
Yes.
With the regulations being adapted halfway through the season and him losing out.
He also hit the kill switch in one race where he just turned the car off by mistake.
Yeah. So season 4, the latter part of season 4 wasn't the best. The first part of season 5 wasn't the best as well. So I understand the team's decision in showing him the door. Having said that, I was really surprised by how Alex Lynn bounced back. And I think I've spoken about that in one of the previous episodes. But he joined the team in Rome, and he hasn't been in the car and hasn't had a single mile in a Jaguar under his belt before shakedown in Rome. He was out of Formula E for more than half a year, almost 1 year, and he bounced back. Didn't score a point in Rome, but he was there or thereabout, and then continuously improved and got to grips with the car, and soon was able to beat Mitch Evans, and that was really surprising. He was near a podium finish in Berlin, near a podium finish in New York as well. So Alex Lynn only scored 10 points, half of Max Günther was able to. but just like Max, Alex should have scored a lot more points this year.
Especially in New York.
Especially in New York. Reliability as well was the big hindering factor for him. Go ahead.
I think for Jaguar, I think really and truly it was the rise of Mitch Evans. And now we all knew Mitch Evans was a really good driver, but he really took the ball between the horns in this season. And I think he dragged that car further forward than it should have been. Because the car did struggle at the beginning of the season. Even Mitch struggled, but midway point, all of a sudden, Evans, he just started climbing up that the order and the standings. And, getting that first win in Rome, and what a way to do it. A fantastic move past Lotterer to get Jaguar's first win. I thought it was a fantastic season for Evans.
It was, yeah. And he can really be proud of himself. He was also on the podium in Bern and New York, and he did a fantastic and an outstanding job this year. As you say, he maybe dragged the car and did score better results than the car was intending him to. But that's fair enough. He did an amazing job, and and that's a thing I really like about his results and his season generally. When he was good on merit, and he didn't need any luck. Of course, it rained in Bern, and but even without the rain, he had the pace to beat John-Eric Verne. It was just a matter of a lack of overtaking opportunities, and if he was good on merit, and when he was good on merit, and that was really impressive to me. And P5 in the championship, only 3 points behind P3 in the championship. I'm sure we can expect a lot more for next year if the car is good.
Would you call this season for Jaguar a successful season, considering that they scored 116 points, but last season they scored 119? So would you class this season for Jaguar as a success?
I would, yeah. Although they scored fewer points, I would still score it as a success, yes. Simply for the fact that they developed a lot throughout the course of these 13 races. And they have a win to show now, a couple of podium places. I would say it was a successful season for Jaguar. And they would have had more points on their tally had it not been for the bad luck that seemed to follow Nelson Piquet Jr. in the first half of the year.
Perfect.
And
right,
Alex
let's
Lynn
move
in the
on
second
to
part of the
Mahindra.
year.
Yeah, let's move on to Mahindra. So Mahindra, I think Mahindra had a really good season. I really do. It was a bit of a mixed bag. They show potential in some races, especially with Verline, Mexico. You have to go back to Monaco. They did quite well as well. But I think this has really been the first season where Mahindra have been caught. Now, I remember speaking to Dilbag back in, again, Paris last season, actually it was. And I said, do you think Mahindra can take it to Audi and Nissan at the time, which was Renault and the big boys at the front of the grid? And he was really hoping. He was like, look, we can, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I feel like that work, not by Mahindra's fault, hasn't been done. But I feel like the bigger teams are now starting to like push forward, and that underdog story that is Mahindra is starting to just become a little bit less and a little bit less. Because you have to remember, Mahindra were a team that were fighting against the odds against Renault and Audi, and no one was expecting little tiny Mahindra to be doing that. And I feel like now it's starting to peter out.
They still won a race though, and they did score pole positions and podiums.
I still think it was a very good season, but I just feel like it's the early signs of them slipping into a more midfield sort of team.
I think, it's difficult to tell. The first half of the year was really good for Mahindra, and the second half was a bit of a yo-yo effect. They turned up to the races and had no idea, and we as journalists had no idea whether they were going to be good or bad. And one weekend they were amazing and their car suited the track, And then we went to a similar circuit, and a circuit that demanded a similar setup, and all of a sudden they were nowhere. Really difficult to tell what the reason for all of that is, but I feel that kind of demotivated the team a bit. No, that's not fair to say. But I feel like they didn't know themselves whether they were going to be good or bad going into the race weekend, and that just psychologically is maybe a bit not ideal.
Yeah, I get what you mean, and I remember it from Verline, actually, from interviewing him this season, where I said, where's the pace gone from the beginning of the season? He looked in his pocket and he went, I don't know, it might be I don't know where it's gone. He's like looking for it in his own clothes, like I don't know where the pace has gone from the beginning of the season. It's just like we turn up the races and we're not quite sure whether or not we'll be quick or not, as you said. So I thought it was interesting, and maybe, obviously the drivers would be like, well, I don't know where our performance has gone, and then the team's like, well, I don't know where the performance has gone. And maybe, as you might have said, it might have demotivated them or made them scratch their heads a little bit, thinking, how on earth has winning the race in Marrakesh with D'Ambrosio gone from just fighting in the midfield and getting... And when you start fighting in the midfield in Formula E, then that's when you get caught up with those silly incidents. And I think Hong Kong was the telling point for Mahindra, where they were at the back of the grid and for no fault of their own, they crash into each other. And that sort of just curtailed that little spell of just bad luck. And then they picked up again in Monaco, and towards the end of the season, you could argue that Verline was starting to get quick again, and they were starting to get to grips with the car again. But it was just a little bit too late.
How would you rate Pascal's rookie year?
I think he's done a good season. I think he was so close to winning in Mexico. And, he arguably should have finished second in Monaco, but he made that mistake. But in some races, maybe because of the car, you didn't really see Pascal. He went missing. A bit like Roland, I suppose, towards the end as well, because, Roland in the middle of the season was amazing and then sort of went missing towards the end of the season. But I feel Formula E is such a difficult sport, difficult series for the drivers to get their heads around, and once you get your head around it, you can be very good. But we've seen so many good drivers come in and struggle, like Gary Paffett. Gary Paffett is a double DTM champion, I believe.
He is.
But then he came into Formula E and struggled. So there are some real good drivers that if you have to get the hang of it. So Pascal Wehrlein, for getting the hang of it and being competitive quite quickly, I think that automatically makes it a really good season, a really good rookie season.
I agree, yep. He had to learn a lot, and you could see that he has the raw pace. He is an amazing talent. That's not me looking through my German goggles, but he is amazingly talented. And we saw him arriving in Marrakesh and already putting the car 0.3 of a second ahead of his far more experienced teammate in qualifying. And he started the race from... Where did he start the race from? P7, I think, in Marrakesh. And D'Ambrosio just inside the top 10. D'Ambrosio, in the end, went on to win the race, and Wehrlein retired after contact on lap 1 with Lucas. But you could already sense that Pascal...
There was something special.
Yeah, he is a very special driver, and a very, very quick driver at that. And he still had to learn FE, though. And that's the thing that's been holding him back. And I think the finish to the Mexico race only underlines that impression. The mistake he did in the chicane, we all remember the scene, him having to cut the chicane and then running out of energy a couple of meters, inches before the line. That mistake wouldn't have happened if we had experience. Jean-Eric Verne or Sebastian Buemi would not have done that mistake. Had it not been for Nissan strategists, obviously. Nissan didn't make the last lap. But generally, the drivers themselves wouldn't have done these kinds of mistakes because they had experience. Pascal didn't have the experience, and that's totally fine. But if he had more knowledge of the car and more knowledge about how and where to save energy, I sound like an armchair expert now, do I? And if he had the experience of how to Formula E, basically, I don't think he would have run out of energy just these couple of meters before the line. Should have, could have, would have. He ended the season in P12 with a podium and a couple of situations in which he almost won. He can be proud of himself. He did show a good season, and he did show a lot of promise as well. Just like HWA is a team as, Pascal did show a lot of potential for next year as a driver.
One word answer. Will we see him on the Formula E grid next season?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So, BMW. So, I think BMW this season was just a tale of what ifs. Now, remember if you remember back to the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about testing and don't believe anything in testing, we all thought BMW were going to smash it. It was their season. BMW had come alive.
Hell yeah.
And it looked like that might be slightly true, although we were Tech Cheetah were definitely close in Saudi Arabia, but winning the first race, and then it's sort of just from that collision in Marrakesh where Sims and Da Costa came together 1 and 2, the season was just never the same again.
Yep, that's true. That was their major first turning point. Afterwards, they kind of had the yo-yo season as well. Just looking at, for example, Antonio Felix da Costa's results. After Marrakesh, his the results of his races: P16, P2, P10, P3, P9, P7, P22, P4, P12, P3, P9. Good and bad,
just
good
up and down.
Bad, good and bad, up and down, roller coaster ride. Yeah. We did expect more from BMW in testing or after testing. Of course, if you believed the data we saw in testing, you would have expected more from BMW. But even so, they won the first race. In my opinion, Techeetah was better in that area, and they should have won the race. And I think in the opinion of many others as well, BMW weren't the quickest ones in Saudi Arabia. Still, they took the victory. And then Marrakesh, as you say, was the big turning point in their season. Antonio ended up second after Wehrlein's penalty in Mexico as well. He was on the podium, and Sanya was on the podium in New York on the Saturday, but only because of a team order. Should have been Alex Sims, who then ended the Sunday race in P2. Yeah, difficult year for them, but generally, looking at the year as a whole, I think BMW can be happy with their first year as a manufacturer in FE. Of course, there's always potential, and there are missed opportunities for them. But still, I think BMW can be happy with it. There could be missed opportunities
for every team, though, sadly, I would say.
Of course, yeah. And I think BMW can be happy with their season.
I think they can be. I think they're going to be strong next season. I think there's still going to be a team that's going to be taking it to Tech Cheetah to try and challenge for that team's championship, take it to Audi as well, like they did this season. I still think they'll be there or thereabouts. I think it was a season of what ifs, but I think they've learned a lot. I think as a team they've learned a lot and they can move forward into the right direction. So moving on, Nissan. Now Nissan were the only team with a double twin motor unit, power unit, twin motor system to be more precise. They had an incredible second half of the season. If they had the second half of the season that they did in the first, they would have been walk-off champions. But, they really struggled at the beginning of the season to get their car together, Tobias.
Yep. I would have to agree. Especially Buemi had an amazing last 4 or 5 races. But they were struggling. I remember qualifying in Sanya, where Buemi was looking set for pole position, and then he binned it because he had a lockup, of course, related to the technology of his Nissan car. Just like with BMW, a lot of opportunities that the team missed out on. Should have won in Santiago. Buemi as well found himself in the wall after leading the race. Roland found himself in the wall after leading the race in Paris. Things could have gone so differently for the team. And even more than BMW, they have a lot of opportunities they've missed out on. Yeah.
It's true. I would agree. Like, Nissan the first half of the season was just too many errors. There was just too many things. The efficiency error in Mexico. They were on for a double point scoring position. We have to remember that. They were like running fifth, sixth. And to get it wrong and to run a race a lap, like finishing a lap earlier than it was going to, was just a massive mistake. And it's a mistake that you don't really expect to see in Formula E, to be honest with you. Maybe you might argue that you'd expect to see it more often. But you know, it was just too many errors. But they got their act together, and the car, I think, got faster as well. I think they developed it really well, because coming out of corners, and you can definitely see it in Berlin, it was just so quick going out of that final corner. Like, but I think he got pole just because of that little coming out of that final section by a couple of attempts. It was just so quick.
Yep, an advantage of their powertrain though.
Which is true.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you remember you were talking about the homologation date. Now, because they've banned Nissan's twin motor setup for next season, and obviously they felt sorry for Nissan. This is like they felt sorry. Okay, we're going to take this away from you, but what we're going to do is we're going to extend the homologation deadline. So the FIA have extended it, so they've got more time to sort of think about what they're doing. Because I remember there was an interview Buemi said, like, we were expecting it to get banned. But for season 7. So they were hopeful. So when we were talking about it a couple of podcasts ago that hopefully they had something up, I don't think they did. I think they were waiting and hopeful that it would be season 7. So they focused on it in season 6. But obviously they've had to rethink their whole strategy now. So, you know, that could be that's the big question mark, I think, for them going into season 6. That's the big question mark going over Nissan's head.
I would say that the changes they will have to make aren't that big. It sounds like it will have a major impact. Guys, you can't run your twin motor setup any longer. That sounds major, but I would really like our listeners to listen to this podcast, but after you've finished this, I refer you over to the YouTube channel of Chainbear F1, and he's made a video this July called The Batteryless Hybrid That Never Made It to F1. And that's a really nice and clear explanation of what Nissan have been doing with their twin MGU setup. It's basically a flywheel curse system, similar to what's been used in F1 between 2009 and whenever they stopped using it. I think 2013, 12, yeah.
Well, it might have been around then.
And that's pretty much what they've been using, just with the deployment being automated and not with a push of a button. Apart from that, it's pretty similar to the Williams flywheel that they've developed all those years ago. And that's, of course, a change, and that will take some time and development and investment, and you will have to work on your powertrain if you read these new regulations, and we're planning on running a twin MGU. Still, I don't think it will have that much of an implication, and I'm optimistic for them still being competitive next year. Of course, they had the big advantage of their flywheel this year. And that made the difference in a lot of situations, especially with the qualifying format. The Nissans could qualify well, although they were in Q1 or Q2. To be fair, the most part of the year they spent in Q3, but they were able to qualify in good positions, thanks to that flywheel setup. And it's not that much of a change. Maybe that's what I'm aiming at with all my ramblings here. It's not that much of a change.
What I think about is what they've learned, really. It's what they've learned from that and how much of what they've learned they can sort of bring over without obviously using a twin motor system, which they can bring over and still gain something from it, because the whole point is to try and make... Because that's what they do. They ban something in Formula 1, fine, we'll do it a different way. Like, I'm pretty sure Nissan, they'll be looking at different ways to sort of get what they were getting from the twin motor. Maybe not fully be able to get the exact same effects, but at least get some of it. So I think that's sort of the key for Nissan going into the off-season. Virgin Racing, so we're getting to the crux of it now, top 3. Virgin Racing, I think a real strong season for them. Virgin, when I speak to the press officers, when I speak to the people around Virgin, they always say, we're punching above our weight. We shouldn't really be a top 3 team. They always sort of like demotivate themselves, or just like not demotivate themselves, but you know what I mean, like they talk themselves down. They don't say, oh yeah, we should be aiming for winning championships or finishing top 3. They just want to be good and consistent, and I think that's probably the reason why they finished top 3. They were pretty consistent this season. Sam Bird at the start of the season was really consistent, was leading the championship, which you have to remember, but then obviously he went off, but then that was picked up by Robin Frijns, who then went on to win 2 more races. So I think in balance they've had a pretty consistent season.
In balance, yeah. I was about to say they had a consistent season if you're not called Sam Bird.
Yes. Well, Sam Bird had a good start, but then as soon as the 4 non-scores, it's easy to forget that he was the championship leader at midway point during this season. He looked not set, I would say, to be champion, but he was on course. He just carried what he was doing on, and he would have been there or thereabouts in New York, but it wasn't to be. But I think Sam Bird and Robin Frijns are a really good driver pairing. I think they're both very good drivers. I think Robin Frijns has come on a lot this season to win those 2 races. So overall, a fairly consistent season.
I would say so too. Yeah, I was really surprised by Robin Frijns actually, because obviously he was a year out and he spent a year in DTM, not racing in Formula E. He was in FE with Andretti in season 3 before he was replaced by first Kamui Kobayashi, then Tom Blomqvist, then Stefan Zarazin. That's
maybe
the
they
BMW influence coming in there, obviously, early in season 4. But he spent a year out of Formula E and then didn't score a point in Saudi Arabia, but was on the podium in his second race back in Marrakesh and had the chance to win it. Finished second and could have maybe won the race as well. If the race
and that was a good point for the team, because Sam Bird was like 4th as well, so that was a good haul of points for the team.
Yeah, I think Sam was 3rd. I think.
Or was he on the podium with him?
It was a double podium for Virgin in Marrakesh, but then of course, as you say, Frijns went on to win in New York, the final race of the year, and we have to give it to him for winning in Paris, one of the most difficult races to race in this year. Hail all of a sudden.
He dominated it.
Sunshine, and he dominated it with a broken front wing and all of that sliding across the asphalt of the Parisian streets. He did a good job in Paris. It was a messy race, and he did a good job in winning it, and really deserves it. And he finished the season in 4th, just 1 point ahead of Mitch Evans, and just 2 points. Trailing Lucas Di Grassi by just 2 points. He could have been in the top 3. And if Virgin continue on with their performance, and if the drivers continue on scoring decent results or good results, don't miss out on so many opportunities. Both drivers had a streak of 4 races without points this season, in addition to other non-score races. If they can stop doing that, please, and if they pick up their consistency again, we will have to keep Virgin on our minds for the title hunt next year.
Definitely. I would agree to that as well. And I think, despite them sometimes talking themselves down, I think, with the Audi powertrain, I'm sure the Audi powertrain will get better. going into next season. They're going to be in there or thereabouts, and there's probably no surprise why Audi comes next and finished in P2. Again, it's just another solid season for Audi, but it doesn't look as solid, I think, as it does. I think, like, on the TV, you see, like, you don't know where Audi are, or they're like, they seem to be crashing, or they're not doing high up. But by the end of the season, they're always there. And again, they were challenging for that team's championship at the end of the season in New York. So again, I think maybe for Audi they would have liked, maybe it's not a successful season because they probably would have liked to have been team's champions. But again, I would say finishing second is not a bad achievement.
They did struggle a lot, yeah, you're right. It's not a bad achievement, no. And I think Audi can be happy with themselves. It's just, how many points is that? 19 behind DS Techeetah?
Yeah.
That is good, but as you say, I didn't have the feeling that Audi was a top and a front runner in each and every race. Sometimes they were just so far behind the others. I remember Monaco, obviously, Lucas did retire in that race, but Daniel wasn't the best either, and that was the one and only non-score race for Audi this season. Again, a lot more could have been possible for the team, but in the end, it's a sport, and things go wrong in sports, and especially in motorsports, things go wrong, or maybe not wrong, but not always according to your ideal plan, and it's just a matter of adapting and of finding pace where there shouldn't be any pace. It's really difficult to put into words, but Audi, they did have a good season, but they also did have more potential, just like any team on the grid, really.
But again, obviously, the win in Mexico, which Degrassi sort of stole off Wehrlein. He also won again in Berlin. And I suppose maybe one of the main reasons for Audi being where they were second was probably thanks to Daniel Abt. And obviously, there was all that talk of, Daniel Abt possibly leaving the team. Yes, he doesn't score the big points that Degrassi scores all the time, but he scored in 11 out of 13 rounds. I think it was 2 races where he didn't score a point. And, in Formula E where it's all about consistency. It's a consistency championship. His points goes a long way towards Audi finishing in second.
Absolutely, yep. You could really feel how much weight was off his shoulders in New York, because Daniel did struggle with his performance in Berlin, and especially in Bern. Well, he was in the top 10 on both occasions, and I think he was 6th in Berlin and Bern as well. But still, you could sense that there was something going on behind the curtains, and you could feel the weight coming off his shoulders in New York. He didn't score... Well, he did score 20 points on both days together, so that's good. But yeah, as I say, Daniel,
I think he deserves a second. I think he deserves.
He does,
even though he's been there
absolutely,
since one season, I still think he deserves that seat. There was drivers I was thinking, okay, there are people like Nick de Vries, or they had Nico Müller, who's been testing the car quite a few times, that they could just drop into that seat and give a go. But to be fair, it's a bit like, at the moment, to compare it, it's a bit like Valtteri Bottas at the moment. I don't think Valtteri Bottas has done anything to lose his seat at Mercedes. I don't think Abt had done anything so far this season to actually lose his seat. Both drivers are super consistent. So for me, it was a no-brainer, and I'm glad he's really good for the sport. He's really good on social media. I know, really and truly, when you think about things like that, you probably shouldn't consider those things in terms of a driver. But I think he's good for Audi. He gets points, and he's helped them finish second. So for me, it was a no-brainer keeping him. And then, so moving on to the final team. Again, fantastic. Techeetah winning the championship. They managed to get redemption from losing the team's championship last season. But I have to give credit to Mark Preston and what Mark Preston has done. Now you have to remember the Drivers' Championship and probably had the fastest car in Season 4 as a customer team to Renault. Now they've got a manufacturer status with DS. like, I don't want to say that there'll be dominant teams in Formula E, but what Mark Preston has done on the software side of things, because that's where they had to get all their gains. Now with manufacturer status, if they keep Verne for next season, if he doesn't decide to maybe, his stock high and he manages to find a Toro Rosso seat next season, then they're the team to beat again next season.
It looks like they will be the team to beat next season, yeah. But again, I'll have to wait until November to clearly say who might have the pace or who might not have. Looking at season 5, it looks as if they will be one of the favourites going into next year as well, though. Yes.
They've done a great job, and they might have been sandbagging a little bit in testing because they were quick, but they weren't BMW quick in testing. But then in Saudi Arabia, they just came out the blocks, and you have to remember, Verne, yes, they got those drive-through penalties, both Verne and Lotterer, but Verne dropped down to like 6th, 7th, 8th place and still fought his way up to second, and it was a real eye-opener, and it was a real, sorry lads, we're here. And I feel like they could have won this championship ages ago, but the bad luck that they had, at the beginning of the season, some of it reliability, some of it just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mexico, you can't expect, Nelson Piquet Jr. to go and drive over the top of one of your drivers. Mm-hmm. There was just some bad races in there at the beginning of the season, but once they got their act together, once Verne got that first win in Sanya, it was Verne never looked like he was going to lose it.
Yes, I would say so. He looked very promising in Saudi as well. Should have won the race had it not been for the drive-through. Tobias Techeetah were amazing in that area. And then their performance kind of declined race by race, maybe bar Marrakesh for Verne, where we momentarily was 22nd and ended the race in P5. An amazing comeback drive by him there. But generally, Techeetah's pace declined coming out of Saudi and going into China maybe, and then Verne won it, and as you say, he didn't have great races in Rome and Paris, but these final 5 races, generally the final 5 races, those were the ones that made him champion, and in my eyes, he pretty much sealed the deal by Byrne and only had to defend his championship in New York. Was under immense pressure in the US, of course, and did manage to finally close the championship on the Saturday and had to do it on Sunday. But he did do the best part of the job in Byrne already. And then with support from Lotterer in the first half of the year, him being second in Rome should have won the race, or could have won the race, but he should have won the race in Hong Kong. He was second to Robin Frijns in Paris as well. He did score a lot of good points for Techeetah, and that's the reason they ended the season in first place and not in second or third, because they consistently scored good results. Both drivers didn't always score good results, but together they scored decent points for the team. And the only race they didn't score they had 3 no scorers. No points in Chile, where they both took each other out of the race after starting towards the back end of the grid. And then Hong Kong, you remember the incident, Lotterer retiring on the last lap after his tyre being punctured by Sam Bird. And of course, New York won the Saturday race. Wasn't the best of days for the team either, but still, nevertheless, Tobias Techeetah did an amazing job, and they are champions, and rightly so in my eyes.
Lovely. So that's a wrap up of all the teams. Now, before we go, we're just gonna. There's obviously been just a little bit of news that we'll just fill in, and we'll give out a little bit of opinion. So, BMW announced, your star man, Tobias, your star man, Maxi Gunfer. He's testing with BMW. Now, that testing with BMW might be on the fact because potentially Antonio Felix da Costa might be teaming up again with Mark Preston at Techeetah. What are your thoughts on that?
Returning to his old team.
Yeah.
Interesting. Really,
That's the rumour going around.
that's the rumor going around. Yeah. So the rumor going around is now that Lotra has decided to switch teams from Techeetah to the new Porsche squad, that there, of course, is an open seat at DS Techeetah. And apparently there have been talks already in New York between Techeetah and Felix da Costa. And if Felix da Costa decides to switch teams, there's an open slot at BMW. And that open slot might be filled by Max Günther now. He is testing with a team in Spain this weekend. I think even today, we're recording this on a Tuesday. I think he should be testing today near Barcelona in Calafat. Yeah, very interesting.
We just have to wait and see what happens.
We'll just have to wait and see. Yeah,
it's just early news. I was surprised BMW announced it. Like, oh, by the way, we're texting Maxi Günther. Hello, but it opens a lot of doors, and it does really open up the driver market if they were to take Günther. And of course, obviously that lowers up seats at Dragon and other places, and there could be a few switcheroos going. So, Da Costa to Techeetah, do you think that's doable? Do you think that? For me, I think that makes sense. I think partnering with Mark Preston again for Da Costa, they had such a good time. They won that race in Amlin Aguri together in Buenos Aires in season 1.
Oh, good times.
I didn't really consider Da Costa for that seat, but then when I thought about it, and I was like, oh yeah, Mark Preston, and when his name was linked, I was like, yes, that probably makes sense.
Yeah, they were linked in New York even when the rumors started. Even before all the journalists left New York, there were rumors going around that Antonio Felix da Costa might soon be talking or joining Techeetah, and it seems more and more likely day by day now. We will have to wait for confirmation, of course, and I'll have to emphasize that we have no idea as of now about any signed contract. I don't think the contract has been signed. Between Techeetah.
I think there's a lot of drivers they could test. I think there's a lot of people there.
Yeah, there are a lot of drivers knocking on Mark Preston's door, and the same applies to Roger Griffiths, of course, at BMW, and Jens Marquardt as well. BMW is a very popular team, I would say, and both obviously are talking to many drivers, whether that be in any serious way or not. It seems rather serious between Techeetah and Felix da Costa, and it seems rather serious between Max Günther and BMW. He's obviously Bavarian. BMW is Bavarian, and he doesn't have his Mercedes links anymore. Remember, Max Günther once used to be a Mercedes junior driver, but he doesn't have these links anymore. So he's pretty much a privateer driver now. He won't be a factory driver right out of the gates. But he is on the open market, just like any other driver might be. And he's not associated with anyone, and is open for talks. And I'm sure he's shown a lot of performance and a lot of potential this year. And that might have been a good application for a job interview at BMW in Munich.
I saw Timo Glock was also interested in it as well, but we might get. I can just see the memes with "Is that Glock?" on everywhere on social media if that happens. But it would be quite funny.
To be fair,
I think we.
To be fair, the Timo Glock story.
Go on.
Just quickly on that, the Timo Glock story is just an interest in Formula E, not in driving in Formula E. Of course, he would like to drive in Formula E. I would like to drive in FE as well. But generally, Timo Glock has been on the record saying that he enjoys watching FE and that he might one day have the possibility to test a car and that he would like to do it. But there's nothing serious linking and nothing concrete linking neither Timo Glock nor Philipp Eng or any of the DTM drivers, apart from maybe Bruno Spengler, linking them to.
That would be good because he's driven it before in the rookie test. I'm pretty sure.
And so has Marco Wittmann. They might be linked to the BMW drive, but by now it looks like it might as well be Max Günther. There's no clear favorite in that.
Right then. I think perfect time to end. I hope you really enjoyed our little end of season review. Thank you so much, Tobias, for being on again.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Make sure... thank you again for everyone who's commented. Thank you for everyone again who's liking the video and supporting the podcast over all its platforms. We really do appreciate it. But we will be back in a couple of weeks' time. I think me and Tobias are jetting off on our holidays for a little bit, but hopefully by the end of August we'll be back with another podcast. Okay, catching up on all the latest news and maybe just talking some Formula E. Or not. We'll see what happens. Right, thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.